All right. We're recording. Make sure people are getting in. We got some participants coming in here. We'll kind of mention this a couple of times, guys. Welcome, everybody joining. We're going to be giving everybody about 5 minutes to get in, and then we'll get started here. Get my chat box open. All right. Welcome, everybody. Morning, Jorge. You guys hear me okay? Out in the audience? All right, great. You guys see the welcome. We're starting at 2:05 on your side, right?
Yep, we do. We're
Okay,
good.
very good, very good. Thank you. Jorge, I think I saw you on the iGel workshop, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 2 weeks ago. I think I remember you asking a question. I could be wrong. Either that or Nutanix, or one or the other. That was that's him. My memory is okay. It's I have 4 kids now. It's not. It's definitely on the decline. Let's put it that way. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. So give everybody a few more minutes here. How's everybody else doing? Everybody okay today in the chat? Might have a quiet group today, Jason. I don't know.
The lunch caffeine hasn't kicked in just yet.
That's it. We need some coffees. I know I need one. I should have drank one before this. Jack, how you doing? Doing well here. A couple more people just funneled in. Welcome, guys. We're just giving everybody a few more minutes here. We started at 2:05. I don't know about you guys. I'm up in the Northeast right now, and or 11. That's true. Pacific time. I can't disrespect my Pacific time people here. I should probably have both on there, but then the Central time people will be left out. So, but I don't know how you're feeling out in Pacific time, but out here in the Northeast, it is cold. We had a glimpse of spring for about a week, and then it went down to 20 degrees last night and the night before. And I got the heat back on. It's rough. I don't know if anyone else in the Northeast can commiserate with me. However, I do see tomorrow going up to 70. So very much looking forward to that. All right, one more minute. We'll kick this off. Thank you guys again for joining. All right, we are at time. So we will go ahead here and officially kick this off. Let me make sure my buttons work here. All right. So, all right. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining. Again, my name is Patrick Toner. We're going to be kicking off one of our webinars here. It's XenTegra. We call it Webinar Wednesday. We'd like to highlight all of our technology partners and their technologies and just take some time and hear what they're doing. So we're going to be talking with Jason McIntyre. I'll introduce him in a minute here from Spot. And just a couple housekeeping items. Number one, we're going to be giving away an Amazon gift card today, $50. So by being on the webinar today, by registering and being here and being present, your name is going to get thrown into, the wheel of, I don't know if I can say Wheel of Fortune legally, but it's a wheel with people's names on it. And if your name is picked, you will win a $50 gift card. That'll be given out by Spot, by NetApp. As for myself, just a quick introduction. My name is Patrick Toner. I'm a solutions architect here at XenTegra. I joined back in November, coming from iGel, one of our core technology partners. If any of you guys are familiar with iGel. And before that, I was with iGel about 4 years. Before that, I was in the healthcare space. All in all, about 12 years of end user compute and digital workspace experience. And in general, just a little about myself. I'm a husband and a father of four. We actually just had our fourth child. Was it 2 weeks ago? I can't think straight. I think it might have been 3 weeks ago at this point. It's been a blur, but we're very thankful. But at the same time, we're selling our house. So I live in Philadelphia today, and we're relocating down to Jacksonville. So we only do major life changes in threes, apparently, in our family. Other than that, when I'm not working, I like to serve in my local church in an addictions ministry specifically. Just really fortunate to be at XenTegra because, we have quite a bit going on. Just a little bit about the company, a quick introduction. Some of you guys probably know who we are. I saw Jorge, I saw a few familiar names in the chat. But I just wanted to kind of start out with who is XenTegra and to give you guys a little familiarity. So number one, here's a quote from our founder and CEO, Andy Whiteside. He says, XenTegra was born out of a need for customer enablement and true partnerships. And that's really the key there is true partnerships and what makes us different. I can tell you when I was at iGel, XenTegra is one of the top partners for iGel. And I always loved working with XenTegra because I knew that XenTegra had the expertise in other core technologies, things like Citrix, VMware, Azure, Amazon Web Services, basically anything that technology I was working on interfaces with. And so XenTegra, we would fall into a category of a VAR, VAR, value added reseller. And the thing that really separates us from a lot of the other VARs is the fact that we really focus on that V, the value. We bring a ton of value, and we'll walk through a few of those things that we do to provide value. But Andy himself, he was a Citrix engineer who started the company about 12 years ago. So from the founder on down, there's just we live and breathe this stuff day to day. When you talk about digital workspaces, end user compute, we're just hyper focused on that space. And so we have a few different ways that we service that industry. We obviously resell the technologies that such as Spot and other core technologies. We also have a services arm, and we can do a lot of custom solutions and things like, hey, maybe you're looking at Citrix and Azure. You have a project in Azure and you want to use Spot for that. We can kind of bring it all together. We're the kind of the one-stop shop for all these things to come together and give you one cohesive solution. And so, that's our story, ultimately. And there's a picture of Andy there. We do a few different things. We're a VAR, we mentioned that. We do services, consulting, managed services. And then we also have another thing that's worth mentioning. We do complimentary assessments. So we're doing a free micro assessment. If you're a Citrix or VMware customer and you just want to see if your environment is running the way it should, if you have all the best practices in place, we'll do a free micro assessment for you. It's about a 4-hour engagement. We'll have a follow-up. We'll show you a detailed report of everything going on. So that's another thing we do. And then of course, down at the bottom, you see some logos. Those are our core technology logos. The technologies that we're just living and breathing day to day. A couple other things to plug here. We are doing a lot of events. So I just give you this URL, events.XenTegra.com. We're making a huge push for in-person events. We've been doing a stadium series, so lots of live hockey, basketball, soon to be live baseball. Thankfully, the strike there didn't happen. So keep an eye on that. If you live near, any semi, the one focus we had is we didn't want to just hit the major cities. We wanted to do AAA events. We wanted to do all different types of events so that if you're living in maybe a little bit of a smaller market, you're not in a major city, you might have something nearby where you can join us, meet our technology partners. So we've been very excited about that. We also do webinars, which we're doing today. Jack asked about the Bronco. We'll get to that, Jack. We also do webinars. So if you keep an eye on webinars.XenTegra.com, you can find about webinars like today's. If there's other technologies you're interested in, you can find it there. Another thing we do is we have multiple podcasts. You can subscribe to these from any of your, the major podcast, solutions out there, whether it's Apple or one of the third-party ones. You can subscribe to these podcasts. They're actually really awesome. If you want to stay current, you want to kind of know what's going on in different technologies. We'll generally have, different experts from the industry come in and talk about where they see the industry going, trends, all that type of stuff. So check that out if you're interested in that. And here you go, Jack. This is the one Jack asked when he could expect delivery of the Bronco. So we'll have to. I'll let my marketing people answer that one for you, Jack. But it's worth mentioning. We are giving away a Bronco. We are giving it away. I don't have the date. So the current Bronco, that's closed. You can't sign up for this now. It does not come in bright blue. Nelson asked if it comes in bright blue. It's some shade of green. I should probably know this and I don't, but it's a really cool shade of green. We're going to give this one away in the next couple months here. And you can no longer put your name in here. However, we would like to announce that after we give this Bronco away, in the works right now, we are already working on getting another Bronco for next year. So stay tuned for that. Have your chance in case you don't win that one, Jack. There's always next year. You can kind of try to win the next one. All right. So that's kind of in a nutshell what's going on at XenTegra. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Jason McIntyre, who's coming to us from Spot by NetApp. So he can kind of just talk about the cool things they're doing over at Spot. It's a really awesome technology. And I'll just shut up and turn it over. Jason.
Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate it. Let me know. I can share quickly. There we go. Awesome.
By the way, as you're getting set up there, Jason, just so you guys know, I'll be kind of babysitting the chat. Any questions come up in the meantime, I'll be watching that while Jason presents.
Yep. Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate that. Thanks, guys. Good to meet you. Thanks for your time and energy today. Jason McIntyre, Solutions Architect for Spot. I'm based in Asheville, North Carolina, and I cover the Americas in terms of a territory, so fairly good-sized territory. We'll get you through this today. It's roughly 300-400 slides, so we should be done before it gets dark. Let's get to it. So the first thing, just to kind of paint the vision for Spot by NetApp, sort of from an ops perspective, these are kind of the 4 pillars where we're focusing our investments. So we've been in the DevOps world for quite a while. That's where we came from. That's where we speak that language pretty clearly. We've also got significant FinOps practice as well from a cost optimization and management perspective. SecOps as well is on the truck coming soon. And then PCOps as well, essentially delivering that desktop as a service to customers across the globe. Just to give a quick product portfolio, I'm not going to go through each one of these. We've got plenty of, again, sort of investments and R&D and engineering efforts just in general to make sure that these areas from an ops perspective are covered. We'll talk about the stuff that's on the truck today in more detail as well. And then just to give a high level about what we do, we are a SaaS automation platform. So we actually sit in between your public cloud provider, any of the 3 major, and we launch the infrastructure, orchestrate that infrastructure using a various mix of purchasing models, instance types, and locations. So if you think about the traditional sort of on-prem world, where you might size, pick your infrastructure, go get all the hardware you need, rack it, stack it, plumb it, get it ready for an application, we will actually park that, and then you park the application on top of the hardware. We work the opposite way. Just deploy your application and we'll help you with that infrastructure assignment, right? It's an automation tool where cost is a byproduct, cost reduction is a byproduct. So that's the high level, and we'll get into some more details in a second. Another way to put that is we tend to sit at the end of customers' CI/CD pipelines. So if you internally are building your applications, maybe moving away from traditional application design and into more of that CI/CD type of structure, we can be that the end of that infinity loop, and we call it continuous optimization. So instead of the event-driven sort of single time recommendation type of engines or reporting tools, we actually actively orchestrate infrastructure sort of every 10 seconds, right? Make sure that the application, as the application has been iterated over time, make sure that that infrastructure matches what the request is from an application perspective. So it's a much different use case, a much different outcome in terms of remediation. Instead of, again, downloading a report and then going and make some changes, we can actually make the changes for you and tell you how well you did afterwards. All right. Another visualization that helps there is on the left, generally when you size infrastructure or you build your compute in the cloud or you compute on-prem, you generally oversize, right? You might use the same instance type that you have, and you basically have some waste in that sort of upper orange area that you see on the left here. What we want to do is make sure that the compute is highly utilized, right? That machine that you're renting now as part of that timeshare in the cloud, that we can make sure that the resources match the demand, right? So that if we need to scale the application up, we can. If we need to scale the application down, we can. And then in general, avoid sort of the on-demand cost of the cloud and try to find, better options for you from a price perspective without sacrificing any sort of performance or efficiency, latency, et cetera. Lots of customers, the marketing NASCAR type slide. I think we're over almost close to 2,000 now. Customers that you probably know, customers that were born in the cloud, some that were legacy data center on-prem that moved to the cloud, and then hybrid and everywhere in between, right? In general, we can help customers in any one of these areas for the most part. All right. So just to recap, some of you may know this, so it may be just a repeat. There are 3 ways to buy a compute in the cloud. There's something called on demand, which is generally the, sort of variable demand options. It's pretty easy to spin up. You can take your credit card or your AWS or Azure GCP account and go get these types of compute instances pretty easily. And they're the most expensive per unit, right? So they generally are the list price of the cloud, for lack of a better term. The next option is to buy something on a committed capacity, where you exchange some commitment for future use to get a better per unit cost than the on-demand rates. The common names for these types of compute might be reserved instances or savings plans, preemptive committed VMs, those types of things. And then there's a third option, which is called spot or excess capacity, which is sometimes up to 90% off, 10 cents on the dollar essentially for this compute. They're definitely the lowest cost, but come with a pretty high risk, meaning that there's no SLA, there's no support. And then, in Azure and GCP with a 30-second notice, they can take those away, and 2 minutes in Amazon. And so customers tend to have trouble running these in production, especially if they DIY it. And that's where Spot can help. In one of the areas, Spot can help as well. The great thing about any of these buying models is the same exact machine, the same exact instance. The type there's no difference between the way you purchased it. So you can, essentially what Spot's going to do is help you get the best compute for the lowest possible cost. All right, let me take the chat. Doesn't seem like
we had a question come in from Prakash, Jason.
Okay.
It says Azure files only support AD and AADDS, not AAD permissions. How can we best have laptops at home joined to Azure AD connect to an Azure hosted NetApp without a VPN?
Okay, that's a pretty deep dive. Not something that Spot can help with today, but I have maybe some offline some options there, just having done some of this work myself. What we focus on here in Spot is compute. So from a compute perspective, that's our area of expertise today. But Prakash, I've got some stuff to follow up with there.
Sure. Yeah, we can have that conversation as well, Prakash. I'll message you offline here. XenTegra, we can definitely help you with that.
Awesome. So from a journey perspective, we help customers in kind of three main areas. The first area that we help with, sort of starting from the left to the right, is as customers establish themselves in the cloud, they tend to lift and shift applications. The applications tend to be more static, maybe more monolithic in nature. Just maybe they're getting out of the data center business and parking their infrastructure into one of the public clouds. We can help with the commitments in this space. So as opposed to turning machines on and off and dealing with the elasticity of that application, which tends to be not a great use case for the cloud for static workloads. For example, a database attached to a single instance doesn't do great when it gets rebooted, right? That data goes offline, et cetera. We can help cover up commitments as a fully managed service here. A good use case or customer would be Ticketmaster. As you probably know, your favorite shows or concerts didn't really have a home in 2020, but you can rest assured that Ticketmaster made a significant amount of commitments to AWS before that season happened, right? And with Eco, as part of the free service, we were able to move $5 million worth of their commitments to another customer in about 48 hours. So the key here is that we can help remove waste, get you right size from a commitment perspective, and do that as a fully managed service. The next thing we help customers on from a journey perspective is as they start to decouple their applications into more stateless workloads, build some clusters using some load balancing techniques, build some auto scaling groups, maybe some big data type of workloads, EMR, Spark, et cetera. We can help customers with their VMs. So as they build these large VM farms and clusters, we can help to essentially, take over the auto scaling, put that auto scaling group on steroids, and allow us to use all the computing buying models available at the time. So we can significantly lower costs and provide much better automation from an infrastructure perspective when customers are sort of in this phase of the cloud journey, sort of call it cloud 1.0. And then pretty much any customer that's got containers at all with any kind of managed control plane, say EKS, AKS, GKE, ECS, Redshift, OpenShift, whatever they've got, we can help. We can provide essentially that serverless experience that they've been looking for, especially the pain of managing containers at scale. So if any of you guys are managing Kubernetes out there, you've probably dealt with the issues at scale, and we can help make that much more palatable, built upon Elastic Group, as well as sort of the Kubernetes control planes as well. So that's kind of in a nutshell where we help customers. Some good use cases here are the same as sort of Ticketmaster. Ticketmaster has around 6 or 7 DevOps engineers to around 1,800 developers. And so it's a pretty significant ratio, not favoring the DevOps engineers as well, who are responsible for managing the application infrastructure components and those tools and security, change control, et cetera. We really gave them a significant amount of time back from managing spreadsheets and trying to deal with scaling these clusters manually, and just take that over for them and do that again as a continuous automation practice. All right, so into Eco. What Eco is, and no one's expecting anybody to be a product expert after the webinar, but in general, think of this as commitment capacity managed service, right? Where we can actually provide optimization. And this is something that XenTegra can really help you out with, right? All the sort of balancing between the DevOps and FinOps alignment, the right mix of strategies in terms of compute and savings plans, the reserved instances, when do I buy them, when do I not buy them, how much should I buy, how long should I buy them for? All of that can lead to a significant amount of waste. And what we can do as a fully managed service is take that time of getting everything aligned, take it away from you, go work on some things that are more important, and we'll create a full strategy. On the back end, we're using lots of AI and machine learning to make sure that the strategy is effective. We handle thousands of customers at really large scale. So we've got our own liquidity in the market in terms of being able to move workloads, move those commitments to other customers. And generally, we can find significantly better discounts than you can find on your own, and manage that as an ongoing basis, right? Essentially, it's designed to work that if your demand should shift, meaning, let's say, the baseline commitment that you committed to one of the public cloud providers to fell below, how do you offload that waste, knowing that you're not going to spend that voucher that you've already committed to spend? We can do that for you. If the demand goes above what you had committed for, we can make sure that you're covered, right, and not paying the list price in the cloud. All as a fully managed service, no human intervention needed on your side once the system's up and running. Moving on to Elastic Group, we talked about sort of helping customers in this space with their standardization in the cloud. This is really the key. Is we put that, again, that auto scaling group on steroids. We provide a prediction mechanism to say that 30-second or 2-minute notice that we talked about earlier. We can predict that instance going offline before it actually goes offline using something called the spot market score, which I'll talk about here in a second. And it essentially allows us to provide an SLA for that capacity. So you can rest assured that those production front-end websites, the production applications, your Jenkins runners, your batch jobs, your EMR workloads, standard VMs, et cetera, that those applications stay up, and we can go on offense and rebalance the cluster before it gets disrupted, and follow the blue-green deployment, which I'll show in a second as well. This is sort of that blue-green method I just spoke about a second ago. And what this means is that if you go with Spot on your own, you try to get that significant discount over the on-demand spend, and you try to build your applications around using Spot instances, you can get some of the features from the public cloud providers, but they generally don't offer the kind of SLAs or support that you might need for production workloads. So in this case, you could see where your capacity might fall, right? Let's use an example of, say, Black Friday or the weeks after Black Friday. A lot of times the Spot capacity just isn't available, right? The cloud providers are really big. They're racking and stacking, compute and storage faster than any other data center in the world. And in general, they're waiting for that to be consumed, and they're willing to give you some discount while it's just sitting there idle, similar to, hotels with Priceline, right? The difference is, of course, the Priceline won't kick you out of your hotel if there's someone that's going to pay more money for the instance. In the case of the cloud providers, they will. So we provide the automation, right, to make this a production quality workload, right? So what we'll do is we'll actually spin up a new instance once we detect that there'll be an interruption, and we can spin up the new instance, make sure that it's healthy, make sure that it's ready, and then gracefully drain the old node to the new node and provide, essentially that elastic stateless type of scaling model. If there, let's say, is a long extended period of time where there will be no Spot capacity, we'll just fall back to on-demand, and I'll show you that in a second. What that means is that no matter what, whether we're using Spot or on-demand or some other kind of reservation, we'll make sure that the application gets the capacity that it needs with a 4.9 SLA. Okay. Next, onto containers. Ocean is the product there, and what we can do if you have containers, really any control plane, build your own, any Kubernetes style, again, OpenShift, ECS. What we do is essentially manage the data plane for you. So whatever control plane you want to bring to the table, if you're full infrastructure as code shop, you can do that as well. And essentially you've got worker nodes that we can turn into potentially Spot instances, shrink those down with some tetrascaling, which I'll show you in a second, deploy essentially a controller pod in the data plane, and then we can understand both the Kubernetes as well as the infrastructure components at the same time, which is pretty important. We want the containers to drive the scaling, not some spreadsheet where you pick the same instance because you like that instance. Here are the kind of 3 ways we help from the container perspective, and I'll start from sort of the bottom to the top. The first one, infrastructure provisioning and pricing, that's what we do all day, every day, twice on Sunday, right? We will handle all the infrastructure. We'll make sure that we're utilizing the mix of pricing models from a compute perspective, whether that be on demand or reserved instances or spot instances. And we'll just make this problem go away for customers. So a lot of customers have struggle here figuring out what instances to grab or to buy, to use. A good example in Azure would be if you pick you build a scale set with your, say, Kubernetes cluster, you can only pick one instance for that scale set. You have to actually build multiple scale sets to utilize multiple instances. We can just blow that out of the water, say, forget about the need for multiple scale sets. We can just build your Kubernetes cluster, and we'll actually manage the scale sets for you and utilize all the instances that work best for your family of applications. The next part is we let the container drive the auto scaling, meaning all of the constraints and tolerations, the network affinities, anti-infinities, the storage requirements, labels, all those types of things, the specs that you built in terms of the container will honor all of that, right? And we'll make sure that we bin pack those pods and those tasks, all those pending pods from a schedule perspective into the proper, sort of cluster definition, so that we've got the right mix of workloads here. The next thing, by the way, this is generally where we pay for our fee. Just this alone, whether we even used a single spot instance at all, we would usually pay for our fee just with this automation. We can drive down the cost of your infrastructure just by right sizing it. And then finally, in the day 2 sort of operations as well, this is where we help customers with, hey, I need some help with chargeback and showback. How do I show that this container or this pod or this namespace is chewing up most of the resources, and get the right mix of departments involved to make sure that we got the container right sized and visibility across the infrastructure. Any questions in the chat? All right. Let's see any. Let me. You guys see the console here? Assuming it's good to go. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Elastic Group, and I just want to show a couple of key features here for you guys. The first one being that the first thing you do is Spot, if you guys have any sort of cloud infrastructure, cloud spend, challenges there, is you create a Spot account. It's free, takes a couple minutes to connect to the system and grab your username and password. And then you connect your cloud account. In this case, I'll use AWS, but we've also got Azure and GCP. And essentially, you can start immediately by migrating those workloads, right? And I'll show you a built-in Elastic Group here that's pretty cool. All right, so I'm going to edit this configuration and just show a couple of pieces that I think would be effective. So again, if you see this score here, this is really our secret sauce, the sort of magic behind the scenes. So I'm going to pick some instances that are fairly popular with customers, some M5s, some large, some extra large. I'll pick some smaller, some T2s and T3s. Again, you might be using different instances in your environment. I'll grab some R5s as well, some large and extra large. And just as you notice that the scores were changing, right? And what's really nice here, as well as maybe pretty boring, is that we have information, that the largest amount of information around all of these instances and how they behave, what the trends are, how much capacity they have, what the cost of those are, how reliable are they, do they go offline often, and then provide those instances with a score so that we can know, let's say, for example, in this case, in AWS, we're using US East 1A and 1B, a couple of different subnets. Make sure that say, hey, let's launch a C5 extra large in US East 1A, but not launch one in 1B. Or even worse, let's not launch an M5 large at all because we have a pretty low score. Or see the difference between these scores. Green is better, higher is better, et cetera. This is what we've sort of pioneered. This is where you can't get this data on your own through the hyperscalers, anywhere else. We can make that spot market reliable for those production applications. And of course, do all that with automation so that it happens all the time. It's continuously evolving, continuously optimized, as opposed to these point in time events where you go download a report, you go make some changes, you shut off a machine for a few days or a few hours, you go move some things around. But by the time you get to making those changes, the applications change 50, 60 times, especially if you've iterated using CI/CD. So that's the key, is that we handle this for you in terms of reliability, which is huge. The next thing that I want to show you guys is really this is the key sort of definition for how we rebalance the cluster should something happen. So if you build your applications from a cloud perspective, you built your auto scaling groups, this would look familiar to you. And there's a few things that we do here that you can't really find elsewhere in the market. One, we fall back to on demand. So should, again, there be no spot capacity available, we can always fall back to on demand, making sure that you've got the capacity that you need as well. And because we charge, and I'll get to this in a second, based on success, meaning it's a budgetless solution, you don't have to pay anything up front. 100% of our customers save money, and you'll only pay a fee as a percentage of the savings, right? So we keep a little piece of the savings that we provide to you, and you'll see a reduction in your actual bill in AWS, Azure, or GCP. The other thing that we do is we utilize the money you've already committed to spending before anything else, right? So this is also big. If you've already committed to reserved instances or some savings plans, we make sure that those are utilized before, and then we keep it running and keep it going on a continuous basis. And then the other thing as well is we can set some things like minimum instance lifetimes. So for example, Ticketmaster is a good use case here. If you have customers that generally have session type oriented web front ends for customers where you don't want that session to end or be disrupted during the middle, we can set certain minimum instance lifetimes, which would affect those scores as well. So, if I move it to 6 hours or 3 hours, you see the scores potentially getting worse, meaning that in those markets, those machines might be disrupted beforehand, and let's avoid it. Now, I'm just talking about this and I'm showing you these details, but you don't have to worry about this. We will take care of this in terms of automation. You can also set the balance between availability and cost and make sure that, you want to make sure that availability is key. Most of us don't want to get called on the weekends. Downtime is much more critical than necessarily how much something costs. So that's a key factor as well. And then finally, if you guys are using any kind of infrastructure as code components, if you're building full automation stacks with Terraform or CloudFormation or JSON, we give you the Terraform templates right here. We're also full Terraform CloudFormation provider, so you can go grab our stuff on the Terraform registry, grab the software off of Git, and basically build in your full enterprise automation suite as well. So that's the key from Elastic Group. And then finally, from an Ocean perspective, moving on to containers, just want to show you a couple cool things that generally customers requested and use quite a bit from a feature perspective. But one of them is just the cost analysis, right? Just in general, giving a clean way, deploying Kubernetes to figure out, hey, what namespace is taking the most resources. And here's a good example. That platform front end in our demo account is chewing up over 75% of the actual cost of the entire Kubernetes cluster. And so that's huge. Just being able to break it down by namespace, be able to show the cost to each of these departments in terms of what they're using is pretty important. And then, of course, the next thing that is really, really helpful is even further making that cluster right-sized and optimized, is we can also say, hey, we noticed that this container requested 4 CPUs and 1.2 gigs of memory, and we honored that request, but you actually only chewed up a fraction of the virtual CPU and a small percentage of the of the memory as well. And then you can go adjust the YAML file and have an even tighter sort of infrastructure cost as well. So those are some of the cool features as well. And then finally, what we can do to give you a simulation upfront is essentially connect something called Ocean Insights. So a quick way to do this is just to deploy this simple script into your Kubernetes tool, kubectl in general, grab a token, enter your cluster identifier, and we'll actually run a simulation. And so instead of actually deploying or migrating or moving workloads from your existing data plane to us, we can just show you upfront what we can do from a savings perspective. And so just to show this here, connect this 60 seconds or so later, you've got a cluster up and running, and we can show you that we can save essentially 70% off your current cost for this particular cluster. And there's a few ways we do that. One, we're utilizing spot instances, right? And we're also reducing the CPU and the memory and the node count, right? Which is cheaper infrastructure just by using less of the service in the cloud provider. But again, even if we didn't use a single spot instance, if you weren't comfortable with it yet, if you still wanted to use reservations or on demand, we can still save you, a pretty significant amount of money just by reducing the amount of memory, CPU, and number of nodes that you need as well. Now, you can deploy this for free. It's easy. Grab a quick simulation in your Kubernetes environment, figure out where we can save you. And then if we want to move forward, we can simply just connect the cluster and get forward with the rest of those details. All right. Any questions?
Hey, Jason, we had a question come in the chat here. Jorge asked, does the management console provide a view into the cost and financials as well as across the hyperscalers?
It does. Yep. So you actually have a view of all your accounts depending on the cloud provider. So in this case, from Elastic Group and from an Ocean perspective, we don't deploy in a multi-cloud environment, meaning we're not going to deploy an Elastic Group and have it migrate between the three clouds. You would just work on one cloud at a time. But yeah, if I wanted to switch to say Azure, move this around, sorry, and provide the visibility in terms of cost and analysis, what are my hours, what are my costs, potential costs, what I'm actually saving, and percentages, as well as sort of usage, hours, breakdown by CPU, you can see those details as well. And then for GCP, similar sort of functionality. From a cloud cluster perspective, what hours am I using? So you can see from all three public cloud providers, but just want to clarify, we're not going to deploy a Kubernetes instance in all three clouds at the same time. We would do one, manage it with one pane, and you can just flop between your accounts as well. You only need sort of one spot account, and then you can connect all of your cloud providers and individual accounts after that as well. All right. Okay, cool. So then let me go back to another slide and we'll stop for questions, but just wanted to kind of discuss one more piece and then we can wrap. What excited me about joining Spot was really the success-based pricing, right? It wasn't that we put a budget in front of you. You had to go grab all the different stakeholders, sign up for the project or the software or the hardware or the service. It was really based on commitment to savings, right? So what's great about this is you guys can essentially see it at no risk. There's no risk to your bottom line. It's a very simple tool to install, connect the account. We're full SaaS. There's nothing to download. There's no agents to install. There's no software to maintain on your side besides what you're currently doing. And then basically we take a percentage of that savings based on the on-demand cost, right? So minus whatever discounts you have from an on-demand perspective, we can save you or we can't. And we can show you all that with assessments and make sure that, the savings driver is a byproduct of the automation. So we can get you the automation to give you back time and energy. And then the win is that you have a lower cost of infrastructure than you had before and some better automation tools than you could necessarily build on your own. So that's the key here. is success-based pricing, based on outcomes. Again, as I said before, 100% of our customers save money. And our job here is not necessarily to lower your bill. The job is really to make sure that we're providing the right unit economics, so that if you're paying $1 per hour for this compute that you need to, and you're running thousands of nodes, this is where we can get that unit economics right, so that that dollar per hour now is 30 cents on the dollar, and you can actually drive more workloads and migrate more to the cloud. The other great thing about this as a former customer is I don't give money back to my business unit if somebody saved it for me, right? I use it for more things, like, hey, I got to figure out some Azure AD stuff with Azure files, or I need to build some more DR. I need to get some more storage. I need to get some more compute. I need to upgrade my networking. I want better bandwidth. I want, whatever, better internal stuff, bigger laptops. That's where we can help. And XenTegra specifically can help you guys with an assessment. We can make sure that we can save you some money, again, without risk. And then, essentially you can use that money to go get some projects knocked off the board, and move on to other more revenue generating activities. And that is it for me. More information for John, subbing in for John today, but you can get started for free at spot.io. Reach out to XenTegra, et cetera, Patrick, and we can get some meetings set up with you guys as well and see where we can help you. And, thanks for your time and energy today.
Awesome. Jason, thank you. So guys, we're going to open it up to some questions. See a couple coming in. Also, while those questions are coming in, Kathy, if you want to start queuing up the gift card winner, we'll get to that as well. But let's see. So we have one question here from Jack. He says, "What is the biggest challenge when transitioning to Spot?"
Well, I think the first one could be, I don't believe it. It's not really true. What do you mean you're going to save me money and take a percentage? So we have some of that objection handling from time to time. And then from a technical perspective, it's generally that the application is not the right fit. So if we're talking about elastic, stateless type of workloads, you want to look at workloads where the instance can suffer a reboot, right? So think about your clusters today. If one of your compute instance goes offline, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, what happens to your application? And so I think that's the big challenge, to make sure that we're not sort of trying to boil the ocean with every kind of use case. We can find some use cases where the workloads are the right fit. And then perhaps we need to go more towards the consumption and the commitment type of economic play, as opposed to actually building out those workloads. Or you might need some help with some code changes, right? Depending on how you build your applications. Some of the CI/CD workflows that you have might not be ready for a full elastic experience where you're using the distributed architecture of the cloud to your advantage. So those are kind of the top 2-3 big challenges, Jack.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. Jorge says, Deb says, this has been very informative. Thank you, Deb. Jorge says, what are memory limits? We have single tables larger than 1 terabyte.
Yeah, I mean, if you're building compute in the cloud, and Jorge, I'm not sure, what your cloud presence is like, but in general, all the instances that are available from an AWS perspective can be used with our tool, right? So if you have compute in the cloud, and even if that's a big, terabyte, single tables with big terabyte weight behind them, the memory is the memory, right? You can buy whatever instance you can in the cloud. We will generally support. Again, depending on the instance, it may not be as available from a Spot perspective, but definitely, all of the types of memory options available on-prem are generally available in the cloud, and usually in all 3 cloud providers. For us, there's no limitation, right? And there's no limitation on size. We can manage clusters with 30, 40, 50, 60,000 machines. The storage limitations are not. But let's break into that a little bit further, Jorge. If that table is attached to an instance locally, then it's not a good fit for Spot, because we haven't decoupled the application we haven't decoupled the state of storage from the actual compute. And you'd want to make sure we do that first before we actually deploy those in an elastic group or kind of an elastic type design.
Great. Any, does that answer your question, Jorge? It was pretty well described. Anyone else? Any other questions? We'll give a minute or two here to ask. Where it says yes. Welcome. All right. Well, if you guys have more questions, feel free to put them in. I think we've got about 10 minutes here. So what we can do is we can queue up the winner of the gift card. So Kathy, if you want to share that out.
Yep, I'm about to share my screen right now if you are ready.
I'm excited for this deal.
We're all ready for you.
All right, I'm going to spin it to win it. All right, here we go.
That's pretty cool.
Wheel of names.
That's awesome.
Oh.
All right, Alex R. Our winner today of a $50 Amazon gift card.
All right.
Yay.
Alex, congratulations.
All right.
You can never say you didn't win anything, Alex.
That's true.
That's like for me.
Oh, man. Alex Bernstein, rats, one away. You were very close. You had the right first name, very close. Well, listen, guys, so we do these every Wednesday. And, we highlight a different technology partner today. I thought, Jason, you did an awesome job just walking through the spot technology and everything you guys do and answering questions. But to everyone on the call, we do this every Wednesday. And so we'd love for you guys to join. There's usually a cool giveaway like this. And again, thank you to Spot for bringing the $50 gift card. But yeah, we'll kind of leave it open for a few questions. If not, we can kind of end. We'll give about 5 minutes back. Jason, any other thoughts here before we look to close out?
Yeah, thanks for your time, guys. Enjoy your Wednesday. Appreciate the energy, and let us know if you need any help further. We can get you taken care of.
Jorge says drinks on Alex. That's now that everybody knows you won the gift card, Alex, you better hide.
Can you buy drinks from Amazon, or the kind of drinks we're discussing?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question.
Pretty soon, I'm sure they'll ship it with a drone to your door in 3 seconds.
Right.
Bud Light. Yeah.
Same day, 1 hour shipping.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much. If we don't have any more questions, we'll go ahead and give you your time back. Enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great Wednesday. And thank you for joining.
Thanks,
Take care, guys.